Watching someone who you love deal with the consequences of their actions in terms of disobeying God or dealing with judgment can be very difficult because there's really nothing that you can do to stop it. Sometimes, no matter how you warn people, tell people, teach people, they will make the decision to not obey God or not please God with their lives. And it's in those times that we have to focus on what God told us to do and make sure that we remain faithful no matter what. And as always, I am so excited about this season. It's already off to a very powerful start. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has ordered the Sunday School Renaissance Journal so far. As I was filling the orders, I literally had tears in my eyes because it's one thing for you to watch this lesson with me and go through it with me. But when you actually invest in a vision and go through that process with me, something that's very personal, for me to be able to share this journal, I cannot wait. I'm going to do those videos after I'm done with the lesson, but to really share what these lessons mean to me and how I apply them and to see how you're applying them. I cannot wait to do that because that's the point of it all for me. This week's subject is very heavy. It is about Aaron's sons, the death of Nadab and Abihu because of sin. And when you look at this and when you read through it, it may not seem like what they did was that big of a deal for them to lose their lives. But first, you look at it says they use their own censers. And that's something where in the temple there are sacred vessels there that were used in the worship and in the offering. And so for them to use their own, that was wrong right there to start with. And then it says they offered the incense together, where the offering of incense is something that was supposed to be done individually. So that was another infraction. And then they used the authority that was reserved for the high priest. That was Aaron's job. Aaron was the high priest, their father, and they overstepped into the high priest domain, and that was wrong as well. And then they also offered the incense at an inappropriate time. They weren't supposed to do it at that time. And this is yet another example of how specific God is. I was sharing last week about how God is so serious about what he wants done and how he wants it done. And I talked about respecting your leaders, and even as leaders, respecting God and understanding how sacred and how serious that is, and even from a position of leadership, for me to disobey God and just not do what he says do, and it's just me, is one thing. But when I'm out of step, I have thousands of people listening to me and following me, and God can't let me do that. So when you're in a position of leadership, God will hold you accountable. And what that also says is that as people who are following our leaders, right? We don't have to call them out. That's something you'll never see me do. Call out any other leader. We don't have to try to correct them. That's between them and God. God handles his business with his leaders. And at 50 years old and having grown up in church and having been a pastor's daughter surrounded by church leaders my entire life, I have seen a whole lot of dirt, and I know a whole lot of dirt. And that's between those leaders and God. It's not my business, as Miss Tabitha Brown would say. It ain't in my business. But it's between them and God, and you don't have to worry about that. God deals with his leaders his way. It's up to us to make sure that we obey God for ourselves. So we see here that Nadab and Abihu both died. It says that they were consumed with fire. God struck them with fire and they were burned and they fell dead. And then Moses stepped in and he instructed them to take them outside of the camp to bury them. And that's significant too, because because of the nature of the sin that they committed against God, they could not be buried inside the camp, with an honorable burial. They had to be taken outside of the camp. And I want to look at Aaron, because Aaron was the high priest. And he had a very high position and a lot of weight in that position. But these were also his sons. And the other priests were their brothers, right? And so Aaron is standing there and he's watching this. And Moses gave them very strict instructions. He said, there were certain things they would do with the covering of the head and rending their clothes to experience grief. And Moses instructed Aaron and his sons, other sons that were remaining, not to do that. You cannot express grief at this time. At this time, I need you to be a priest. And that right there, you hear me talk about how the word ministers to me. And again, these scriptures have been coming because, just to be completely, transparent, I said I would be sharing more of my Christian walk with you. Since the death of my mother, my daughter has been struggling. We have been having a very difficult time over the past year. And it was heavy because if you're a parent, you already know what it feels like when your child is struggling, you don't know what to do. And so I said, God, this is too much. How are you expecting me to come before your people? How are you expecting me to teach your people and witness and prepare these lessons when I have this burden, when my heart is heavy because of my child? And, I was feeling it, and it felt like the closer we got to the launch of this new season, the worse things were getting. And I'm just like, God, I can't. I was going to him. But when I studied this lesson and I saw how Aaron watched two of his sons just be killed, and he did not even have time to grieve them, and he was not allowed to mourn them, and he was required to function in his role as high priest, because in this lesson it says once Moses gave Aaron and his sons these instructions, it says they did what he said do. And I thought about that and I said, well, that's my answer. If it was required for Aaron to continue to focus in his role after what he experienced with his sons, surely I can't stop. I don't have a pass, because of what I'm dealing with my daughter. And that's something that, going back to the Sunday School Renaissance Journal, that's what this journal is all about. So there's a section where it asks you to share a specific situation in your life where you can apply this lesson. That's why I did that. And that's why I do this. This is what I've done for years, because the Bible has some amazing stories of power and might, but it doesn't mean nothing if you're not living it and if you can't find a way to apply this power to your life. And when we look at these two young men and how they lost their lives, I'm old school. I came from the day where you couldn't walk in the church, you couldn't run in the church, you couldn't talk in church, we couldn't chew gum, you didn't touch the altar, you didn't play, you didn't go up there, none of that. And it was very strict. And even to this day, I still abide. I don't chew gum in church. I don't walk. I don't talk. None of that. I'm still very respectful of the house of the Lord because my mama had me scared, And today, though, I kind of talked about this last week as well, is do your own thing, do things my way. We challenge traditions and protocol, which I am not big on tradition and protocol. However, I do have respect for the house of God and the way that God instructs us to do things. And it's important to learn and understand why we are instructed to do things a certain way. Look it up in the Bible and figure it out and understand that you can't just offer God anything. You can't just represent God any old kind of way, because when you do that, you put yourself in danger. And to Aaron's point, when things are heavy, no matter what's going on around you, it doesn't give us a pass. As a church leader, I'm sure if you're a leader, you've gone through this. I have heard every excuse in the book for not showing up, for not doing what you're supposed to do. And, as a leader, all I can say is, okay, I can't condemn nobody for that. But ask yourself, is God really buying this excuse? The minister of music said okay, the pastor said okay, the teacher said okay, the director said okay, but God is not saying okay to a lot of these excuses that we're offering him, and he's holding us accountable. And we will see repercussions, even to the point of judgment in our lives for doing that, and we don't want to do that. That's why Sunday school is so important. Get in this word, understand this word, because you can't do what God is telling you to do if you don't understand it. So get in it, understand it. If you have specific questions of me, email me, ask me. People have done it. Or if you want to ask in the comments, I'm trying to be better about the comments. I've fallen off in preparing, but I plan to get back in there and get back in those comments. But ask me, ask a pastor, ask anybody. I'm not in competition with pastors. My goal here at the Sanctuary Renaissance is to empower you to be a better steward in the ministry that you are part of. I'm not trying to build anything off of anybody else. My goal is that you understand this word so that you can live according to the word, because Jesus is coming back. And so, there's the thing about wanting to go to heaven, but there's also wanting to live right down here, to live quality lives, to please God in our everyday lives while we are yet on the earth. And this is a very, like I said, it's a very heavy, very sad lesson. And once these men lost their lives, it could not be reversed. It could not be undone. They were there in the priests in their priestly robes one minute, and the next minute they're being carried outside of the camp to be buried. And we don't want to follow that example, right? We want to follow the example of Moses and Aaron, and to continue to do the work of the Lord no matter what. I have just got to share this. I rarely do this, but when I was doing this specific lesson, this is the fourth time that I had to record this lesson because something happened with the equipment. Now, I am in a state-of-the-art studio, everything. And the machine, the memory was full. Whoever's job it was to clear it didn't clear it. And I'm just recording. It didn't work. The person who manages that and set it all up is not here today. So now I'm in the control room trying to figure out stuff behind the scenes that I've never done before, didn't know how to do. And somehow I figured it out and got this done. And I was just, the enemy did not want this lesson to be taught today. And you know what? I am claiming the victory, and I'm claiming it for me. I'm claiming it for you. And after this, what I experienced in the studio today, I am claiming next week, I am coming back with a victory testimony on what God did for me, because this right here was nothing but a setup for a blessing. I am looking for my miracle today. When I leave the studio, I look for the situation to be better. And I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to tell you just how good God is.